And you mentioned that you thought maybe that Paul's thorn in the flesh was all of these attacks against him everywhere he went. He did call it a messenger of Satan, to buffet me. To buffet means to beat on. Now, there are other places in the Bible that refers to a thorn in the flesh in the Old Testament. And it always refers to people who are problematic to the people of God. Let me just read some of these. Now, Paul, being a Jewish scholar, a Pharisee, very schooled in the Old Testament, he had been brought up at the feet of the most famous rabbi of that day, Gamaliel. So he was grounded in the Old Testament, especially the Torah, but all of it. So he knew about these references to thorns in the flesh. So in the Old Testament, the phrase thorns in your side specifically referred to the Canaanites and the surrounding pagan nations that Israel failed to drive out of the promised land. God warned that if Israel did not remove them, these remaining inhabitants would be constant sources of trouble and temptation and traps. God said they will be thorns in your sides. And then Numbers 33:55, God warned Moses that any Canaanites left in the land would become pricks in your eyes and thorns in your sides. In other words, if you don't completely cleanse this land, Moses, the ones you leave behind, they will be pricks in your eyes and thorns in your sides. Now that was Moses. And then in the book of Joshua reminded the people before his death that if they turned away and aligned themselves with the remaining nations, these nations would be snares and traps unto you and scourges in your sides and thorns in your eyes. So these thorns is always people that are a harassment, that are an irritation, that are a problem. And then in the book of Judges, after Israel failed to completely conquer the land, the angel of the Lord announced that he would no longer drive out these native people, stating that they shall be as thorns in your sides. So when Paul uses this messenger of Satan, he describes it as there was given to me a thorn in my flesh. As a biblical scholar, he would be very aware of how this expression had been used in the Old Testament. So I think it's probably likely, I think there's a good chance that Paul is referring to everywhere he went, there were these continual attacks on him. He goes to Lystra, and by the way, he is fulfilling the call of God on his life, the apostle to the Gentiles. But here's the thing, my friends, if God can trust us, he will send us, because we live in a fallen, sinful world. Much of the world, many parts of the world, they hate the God of the Bible who has revealed himself in Jesus Christ. And many people right here in America, in Canada, in Ireland, they hate the God of the Bible. I'll never forget, probably been a year or so, maybe a little longer, Mike Johnson, a member of Congress, he wasn't that well known publicly, but of course his colleagues obviously knew him. He's from Louisiana, a devout Christian. I didn't know this until this, but his Republican colleagues in our system, the House of Representatives, they vote in what's called the Speaker of the House. And so he presides over the House of Representatives. He's able to have a lot of influence on what kind of legislation is voted on and so on. So he exercises a lot of power. And actually, he's the third in line to the presidency after the vice president. And so because the Republicans had the majority His Republican colleagues, who obviously had a lot of respect for him, voted him in to be the Speaker of the House. Of course, not a single Democrat voted for him. And because he was quite a new face to the media, he's had different interviews, and they're trying to find out who he is. And in one of the interviews, he described himself as a Bible believing Christian. Now, isn't that a nice way to describe yourself? I mean, that gives me comfort and hope for some politician to describe himself as a Bible believing Christian. Well, his Democrat colleagues and the secular media in America, they lost their minds. They called him a threat to democracy. They compared him to the Taliban, and compared him to the Islamic mullahs in Iran, and called him a right-wing extremist and a threat to democracy. Why? Because he described himself as a Bible-believing Christian. And by the way, he has continued to stand strong in, oh God, in his position, and he has regular prayers there in the House of Representative chambers. But the hate that has been unleashed against him is amazing. My friends, here's what I wanted to say from this. When God can trust us, we live in a fallen world. When God can trust us, he will send us into places where he knows that we're going to come under attack. Not because that's his will for us, but because he knows that's what's going to happen, because that's the response of some of the people where he's sending us. Although there's others there, he knows their hearts are open to receive. So may we be the kind of people that God can entrust us with any kind of assignment anywhere in the world. If it's in Washington, D.C., in the White House, or if it's on the backside of the desert somewhere, may we be the kind of people that God can trust us to send us in any situation, knowing that we are going to be faithful to represent him and to bear his name.